All right, welcome everybody to Interactive 2020, the virtual Americas edition of the Intuiface User Conference. This was originally going to be an in-person session at the Digital Signage Expo conference in Las Vegas. It would have been the second annual Americas edition at DSC 2020, but there was no DSC 2020, and we all know why. So we've decided to bring this online instead, and we have a great number of people joining us, which makes us quite excited. The invite list was intentionally biased towards North America, Latin America. The geography is more likely to attend a North American conference than a European conference. Our user conference was in Amsterdam to coincide with ISE. So this was our gift to you in North, South America, Latin America, Canada, that sliver of the globe. Now, some of you have snuck in from other geos, but you're welcome, that's okay. So I wanna start by taking a look at the agenda. So we're gonna begin with me saying hello, and then I'm gonna do a little bit more where I talk about the State of the Union. At the conference in February, the big user conference, this was an opportunity to talk about 2019. We're now, 4 months into 2020, so we'll take a quick look back, but not spend too much time. Then I'm going to hand the reins over to one of our favorite people in the world, Paolo Tossolini, who's going to present the same material he presented in Amsterdam, building interactive experiences for large enterprises, and we'll have a live Q&A after that. This will be followed by our technical support master, Sebastien Meunier, who will be showing you some tips and tricks, mainly derived from Amsterdam, but maybe amped up a little bit because we've had a couple months in between. We'll take a break. You can go to the bathroom if you want. I don't want to tell you what to do, but you can take a break, relax a little bit. And then when we come back, I'm going to present some material that was just published in Dave Haynes' 16.9 blog about touchscreen guidance in a post-confinement world. This will be followed by a look at our roadmap. This is a preview of features in our pipeline. It's one of the most popular aspects of our conference because you get to see stuff before it's ready. And so you'll be amazed at what's in there. Followed by an Ask Us Anything. We like to do this at the user conference. Think about it, questions you've always wanted to ask. Maybe they're off topic for the content we've discussed. You can talk about and ask us anything. This will be followed by my colleague, GM of Sales for North America, Kurt Haller. He's going to give you a business perspective of approaching the world of interactive digital content after the recovery. Then I'll close it up, and because volume always goes to 11, we're going to have a happy hour after this, where we can stick around, have conversations, and talk to one another. Now, look, here's how I think it's going to work. For question and answer, okay? For Q&A, what we're going to do is have you type your questions in the questions panel of the GoToWebinar toolbar, okay? If you look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, there's a GoToWebinar toolbar, there's a questions section. Type your questions in there. We have so many people online, we cannot imagine unmuting everybody. That would be a mess. So the process now is type in your questions. One of us is going to monitor that questions panel all the time. Ask your questions on the fly, publicize those answers, but in addition, we'll curate a couple of those questions and answer them out loud, okay? So for the formal conference, type in your questions, we'll answer them in the GoToWebinar toolbar, and we will verbally answer a couple of selected questions as well. For the happy hour, I don't know, maybe we can unmute everybody and see how it goes, okay? So thank you again very much, everybody, for attending. Let me formally welcome you to this conference. As we said, in Amsterdam. Why do we have this user conference? Well, we really look at this as a way to reward our users, to educate them, to empower them. We have a bit of a family here. We're not a big company, you know that. We work very hard to address your needs, your challenges, and we try very hard to get to know everybody. And you guys have been fantastic. We had an excellent 2020 on the business side has shaped up to be another excellent year. Health-wise, a different story, and we'll be talking about that a lot, I imagine. But certainly from a business perspective, it's really the best year ever. And this is a way to say thank you, to reach you personally and share information that we think will help you do a better job of planning and understanding how to get the most out of Intuiface. In theory, it's also an opportunity to talk to one another. Normally, we'd have networking sessions, for example, where people can talk to each other. And I got my timer over here. So can't really do that. Maybe we'll try the happy hour, see how it goes. Because you know what, if the happy hour works and we can have people talking to each other, we should do it again, right? So we'll try it out. Here's Intuiface before social distancing. So this is who we are. We are just thrilled to be able to be with you virtually. We're all locked up like you are. Our hair is growing out of control. My shirts are tighter, which I guess is because I'm bulking up muscularly, which is odd because I'm not lifting any weights, and yet I'm gaining some really solid bulk that I'm sure my wife is thrilled with. Some of you may not be aware. I guess most of you are already customers. I don't know how long you've been customers. I'm not sure you knew that, in fact, we originally were called Intuilab. So a little behind the scenes here. Not sure you knew that. But yeah, we've been in Intuiface for about 1.5 years now. The product was always Intuiface. The company was Intuilab. So you insiders who were smart enough to be with us for a while already knew that, which I think is pretty exciting. And maybe none of you knew this, which I always thought was interesting. You know, you're here at the user conference. You want to learn a little bit about us, right? When the company was first founded, it was all about hardware and software for air traffic control, which is probably maybe a little hard to believe. You know, Toulouse is the home of Airbus, you know, the big Boeing competitor, and that's why Toulouse was headquartered, Intuiface was headquartered near Toulouse, and that's how we started. And there was a germ of an idea to do interactive touchscreen creation for this hardware, and that ended up becoming the business, which is pretty awesome. Here's a picture of some of the hardware. And in that left photograph, see that guy on the right? That's Seb Meunier. If any of you have met Seb Meunier, he looks about 12 there. I don't know how, I mean, I thought this was only about 2004 or 5, but that might be 1980. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, so some reminders. We are still tweeting about the event. It's virtual, of course, but we're still tweeting about it. Hashtag Virtual Interactive 2020, hashtag Intuiface. Don't tell me you're busy. You're sitting at home like us. You can ignore us for a second and tap out a tweet. Nothing wrong with that. As I mentioned, we will have the happy hour afterwards, so stick around if you have the time. And certainly with the Ask Me Anything session, please also prepare some questions, because that's what we're here for. So if you remember, on the agenda, the first thing we have to discuss is the state of Intuiface. So now I'm going to discuss the state of Intuiface. So this was originally, as I mentioned, purely about looking back at 2019. I will also now spend some time looking at, a little bit, looking at 2020, but thanks to Seb and to Vincent, Kurt, Paulo, we're going to look at 2020 as well in lots of different ways. So if we think about, broadly speaking, the performance of the business, if we're healthy, that means we can invest in the product that's good for you, right? Over 1,600 customers as we rounded out the year, over 10,000 players. We're in 73 plus countries right now. It's a very global business across market verticals, right, across use cases. We're even in the countries of Jersey and the Cayman Islands. That's true. I didn't know what JEY was. It's Jersey. In terms of product quality, so we're now over 400 articles in the online library, the help center. We've shipped over 467 features and bug fixes across 12 product releases, and that's just 2019. You've seen some new product deliverables this year, which I will talk about. So these numbers even go up. But looking at 2019, it was a busy year with almost 2,700 support tickets, most of which were just questions about how to do things, not problems with bugs. We're very careful about bugs. And analytics has really taken off. Over 123 million data points collected across accounts. So it's an explosion in data points, and it continues to go up because everybody knows going by gut feel is a terrible way to run anything, including a business and a digital deployment, is to go by gut. So don't go by gut. Our president shouldn't go by gut. I never said that. So community support, just looking at our community briefly, we did introduce Intuiville last year, that virtual showcase. illustrating multiple ways of using interactivity across verticals. It's actually now 11 verticals. We added banking this year. And we've also started in 2019 to validate hardware models. And we were at 42 in 2019. Now it's more like 50 with, I believe, 12 brands. So we continue to invest in these the material to help you identify what will work for you or get some inspiration about where you can invest further. We continue to work on that. We also, by the end of last year, we had 32 creative experts, 46 value-added resellers. Both those numbers have gone up as well in the past 4 months. So it's been, as I said, 2020 was shaping up to be a great year until Mr. Coronavirus. So we will talk about that. It does change things, doesn't it? But there's no reason not to be optimistic that at some point there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we need to prepare for that. On the product side, well, just let's look back at 2019, just as a refresher. It was a busy year for us. For example, we introduced deployment scheduling. Okay. Now, let's be honest, this is not some groundbreaking feature. It's sort of a must-have for deployment. It just wasn't something we had, and we were able to deliver it in 2019. So you could pick the frequency, the date, the time for deployment. In fact, particularly from Windows devices with Player, there's other things you could schedule, like remote player updates and device reboots and that sort of thing. So we built in a fairly robust deployment feature. I know a lot of you were asking about it, so we were thrilled to deliver it. And by the way, like anything we do on the server, there's an API behind it enabling you to build your own UI. So if you're an agency or an integrator that wants to white label remote deployment, for example, you could, because you can just use the API. Seems like a minor one, but this was a big deal. A lot of you had requested this, was to auto-scroll ordered collections, to really reproduce the notion of an automated playlist like you might see in traditional digital signage, where you're slowly walking through one bit of material at a time, images, videos, what have you. We did build in that capability, so you didn't have to program things with triggers and actions. It was just a property. And then things were automatically scrolling on their own. That was a big deal. We also introduced adaptive text. It was another big request. One of the beauties of Intuiface is the ability to integrate with external data sources and pull that content in and display it, and then include a text, right? So you might have text about a piece of work of art or an item in a store, what have you, and you'd pull in the text and display it. The problem was that you had to anticipate lots of text to make sure the text box was big enough to fit all the text, which meant sometimes when there's a little text, you had extra space. It just didn't format well. And with adaptive text, now you can essentially automatically resize the font to make sure everything fits and can be displayed. You could also make it scrollable within the text assets. You no longer had to worry about text not fitting in a text asset through binding. It's a big deal if you're using binding with interface assets, and we solved that with adaptive text. That was a good one. We first introduced Nextmosphere integration last year. We actually expanded that this year. Last year, when we announced it, it was about Windows in particular, where we can work with the entire host of sensors and actuators provided by this company called Nextmosphere, headquartered in Amsterdam. The beauty of Nextmosphere is it's a very large and super simple set of sensors and actuators. So motion detection and buttons and RFID readers and light strips and audio players and all these different things you could incorporate in your interactive experiences. And we had out-of-the-box native integration with these guys. So something like a lift and learn scenario, if you were in Amsterdam, we illustrated how you could build lift and learn with Intuiface and Nextmosphere. Lift an item, do something on a screen like play a video, literally build that in seconds with Intuiface and Nextmosphere. Seconds. Whereas if you're writing code, how long is that going to take, right? So we were thrilled to introduce our Nextmosphere integration last year. Over the next few months, we also added Android and BrightSign support. We'll get to BrightSign in a moment, but that means that if you're using Nextmosphere in Windows, BrightSign, or Android, you can incorporate those sensors and actuators in your experiences. No writing code, right? As always, we continue to invest in analytics as well. In particular, we felt that there were a couple chart types that would end the basic set of charts any kind of dashboard should have. Remember, with Intuiface Analytics, not only do you have the ability to collect all the information you care about in the context of an event, you know, if an item is selected, if somebody walks in front of the screen, if it starts raining outside, these events can trigger data collection. We let you do that, and we let you build charts so you can visualize this information, identify trends, reach some sort of insight, and then publish those charts as dashboards. It's a pretty heavy-duty feature that people logically understand is super critical. And all of those charts and thus the dashboards are connected to the live data source. Every time you refresh, you're getting updated data in those charts and dashboards. So for us, the main thing to fill was what was left to give you a complete visualization in that dashboard. And that was single value engage. So single value is there's one single value you care about. Maybe there's a target number or whatever, but there's a single value you care about. We introduced that chart. And then the gauge will show you where it is within a range. With these two, we kind of completed the set of basic chart building blocks we think were necessary so you can have really actionable dashboards. So we delivered that. As I mentioned earlier, we did introduce Intuiville last year. We now are up to 11 verticals and 75 scenarios. It's just on the website. You just go to the website and pause. I hope. Go to webinar was talking to me. I hope it's okay. 11 verticals and 75 scenarios, free for anybody to look at. This is not about templates we sell, pre-built apps we sell. These are uses of interactivity and thus uses of Intuiface to inspire you, to give you new ideas. This is not a complete list. We'll continue adding verticals, right? And by the way, if you have good ideas, let us know. The next two topics we discuss concern developments this year in 2020, so we didn't even talk about these really in Amsterdam. And the first concerns the 7th player-supported platform, that's BrightSign. This was certainly a big deal for us because BrightSign is the global market leader in global digital signage media players. That's a big deal. Large install base, creating digital signage and other types of digital content deployments all around the world. It was the top of our list for Edition 2 player. And so here we have BrightSign, our 7th player-supported platform. For those of you familiar with BrightSign, you can provision player using Control Cloud, so you don't have to be on site to install player on BrightSign devices anywhere in the world. Which BrightSign devices? As of today, certainly XT3 and XT4, so either Series 3, Series 4 of the XT models. We are also in the process of evaluating the XD and HD models, so stay tuned. We'll let you know quite shortly. But at the end of the day, this is a 7th player-supported platform, large install base. If you're looking for a platform to run your digital content on, we do highly recommend BrightSign. They are well deserving of their reputation. The other topic concerns face detection with OpenVINO, and this is fresh. This is something we announced yesterday, so this is really new. It's still hot from the oven, and this is all about face detection, which conceptually probably is a news to you, this notion of using cameras to identify age, gender, other characteristics of people in front of the screen. The beauty of what we announced is that all of you can do this for free. There's no inclusion of third-party content, third-party capability that probably has some costs associated with it. What we've done is we've adopted the Intel distribution of the OpenVINO toolkit. So the OpenVINO toolkit is this open source toolkit that exists to enable software applications to emulate human vision. It uses inference engines and pre-trained models to identify objects and make decisions about what those objects actually are. This is all free, this is all open source, and Intel has a particular distribution of that which we adopted. It is a Windows-only solution right now, but any Windows device, any camera on the Windows device, we can accurately capture age range, gender, head pose, dwell time, and even emotion. We can capture emotion with the help of the OpenVINO toolkit, and all of that information is available to you for conditional triggers. Hopefully most of you are familiar with the notion of a trigger. You know, if something happens, then do that. in Intuiface, your triggers can be conditional, such as if it's a 30-year-old female, then, well, now you can do that. And all of this can be done at no cost, thanks to Intel's distribution of the OpenVINO toolkit, which is entirely free, and we tell you online how to install it and use it. What I'm going to do is play a video for you and turn it over to Seb. Seb Meunier created this demonstration of the OpenVINO toolkit in action through Intuiface, and I think you'll get a kick out of it. So Seb, take it away.
Alex, thanks for the joke. Alex asking if you have the right video codecs installed on your machine. So in the video right now, my wife is detected by the webcam. We are shooting the videos at home, as everything we are doing here. She's being followed by the webcam, so she can basically make a selection. Here, choose a menu. She could answer a poll or yes/no question, make a choice without touching the screen. So that will be pretty useful in the coming days where people will not want maybe to touch screens right away after this virus thing. Then she will be turning her head on the left or on the right so we can detect the angles of the face, the pitch, yaw, and roll angles, and based on that, control the 3D object asset that we have within Intuiface. Very short thing. Jeff, we don't need to go into the composer thing. The video is available in the Help Center article. But as usual, basically, it's an interface set with some properties, triggers, and actions, so you don't have to write any code to build such a demo, and you have lots of additional examples in the sample in the marketplace that you can download for free.
Thanks for that, Seb. So pretty cool stuff, right? I bet you didn't imagine you can even use your head to manipulate on-screen content, do navigation from scene to scene. It's pretty impressive what you can do, and it's all done without writing code. I do want to tip our hat to Intel. They did offer some assistance to help us deliver this integration. And the good news is we even have them co-presenting a webinar for us next week. I believe it's on the 23rd for North America and Europe. There's another one on the 24th that's timed best for Asia Pacific. We are co-presenting with Intel a webinar in which we will review the basics of human vision emulation with OpenVINO, and then taking a very specific look at how it is implemented inside Intuiface with demonstrations and all that cool stuff. So we hope to see you there. We talk about it. It was in the launch email. It's also in the blog entry, our blog about the OpenVINO face detection integration. So you can find everything you need to join us for that webinar. We hope to see you there. Okay, so just looking forward to 2020, we're going to be able to go into some of this again later today. For example, with Vincent, when he talks about the forecast, the product forecast, the product roadmap for this year. The way we're approaching 2020, the whole viral pandemic certainly is an influence, but I don't think changes it. First, the physical space is going to get its due. Now, for no other reason, the physical space is going to get its due because we're social distancing, we're worried about contamination. It changes the way we interact with things and people in the physical space. So the customer journey, anybody's journey in the physical space is going to be affected. We need to account for that and plan for it. We also believe that regardless of what happens in terms of the virus, the pandemic, we think that prospects and clients are going to increasingly be concerned about having enterprise-ready platforms in which organizations can be comfortable with the knowledge that their information is safe and secure and always available. That I can tell you from our experience, we're always getting these long spreadsheets from IT organizations asking us all these questions, and that's going to increasingly become the norm, to get assurance from signage providers, any kind of digital content providers that they're protecting and securing information. So we think that's going to become very important in 2020. And finally, what we're doing is also just going to accelerate this ability to generate no-code, low-code content. Not only is this interesting for the business worker, who uses Excel, but also for you, of course, to accelerate your business, to satisfy your internal or external clients, but also just to make sure that you can deliver exactly what it is you care about, and to do so with levels of security and quality taken care of by those platforms. You don't have to worry about it. So that's how we currently think about 2020, and hopefully some of our roadmap will make that clear for you. So that's my piece. I'm now going to turn it over to Paolo Tosolini. Now, the plan was to play a video of Paolo's presentation. So what I'm hopeful is that we can do that despite the issues we just had with playing videos. Maybe we'll have more luck with this one. So let me see if I can switch over to Paolo's.
Hi, my name is Paolo Tosolini. I am the founder of Tosolini Productions. We are a creative agency and innovation lab based in Seattle, Washington. We specialized in business storytelling using emerging technologies such as touchscreen solutions, created, of course, using Intuiface, 3D virtual tours, augmented reality AR, and virtual reality VR. We mostly work with large corporations such as Microsoft, Accenture, Deloitte, and I thought in the next 15-20 minutes to share some of the learnings that we came across when we have been dealing with these organizations. When it comes to outsourcing creative services, companies have a lot of choices. They can go to a smaller agency like us, or they can go to a bigger agency. Sometimes we envy the bigger brothers because they have more resources, they get big projects, and so on. At the same time, their cost structure is such that they don't look very favorably at the pure research activity just for the sake of figuring out what's next, if they cannot really monetize every hour that they work on. Whereas a smaller agency can afford to spend sometimes weekends or nights just for the sake of study in depth certain features. Which makes me think that the competitive advantage here for a smaller agency is really agility and speed of innovation. Now let's dissect a typical project. Usually there are three phases. The first one is planning. When you meet with a client, you figure out the budgets, the timeline, where the content is coming from, and so on. The second is execution. This is probably the most fun part, at least for me. You figure out the messaging and how you are going to translate it into a nice design, of course using Intuiface. And third is the deployment. For example, if it's an event, you probably want to hire some vendors. There is going to be hardware involved, licenses, and so on. At any of these stages, you may encounter some challenges. Challenges that may come in different form. For example, a new stakeholder who wants to have a say into your design. Or maybe at the last hour, content is changing in a way that was very unpredictable. So the good news here is that Intuiface is a tool that allows you to remain agile despite all these challenges. And I'm going to show you some real examples where that happened. And I'm going to start with events. And in particular, I'm going to talk about wayfinding. So a couple of years ago, Microsoft approached us and they asked us to create a wayfinding experience to locate partners in their booth. So usually when Microsoft go to third-party events, they rent a big space and they invite 40, 50 partners. So there is a need of a particular experience where you could identify the partner that you want to talk to. So in this first iteration, we tried to do too much, but we didn't know it. We didn't know it until the end. So in fact, we added the sponsors, favorites, emails, print capabilities. But at the end, we looked at the Intuiface analytics, and we found that only a small percentage of people were using all the features. So during the next iterations, we went leaner, and we only implemented the features that were needed. But there were other challenges. So for example, at the last, almost the last hour, content was changed. For example, partners were swapping position from one location to another. And then we reached out to the Intuiface team, and they told us, Paolo, you can resolve this by creating a hidden feature on the player so you don't have to actually be on site or redeploy all the time, and let the event manager do the small change on site. So that saved a lot of time for us, and for me, it's really a synonymous of agility, a tool that allows you to get your life back. Lobbies. Big corporations usually have nice offices, and those represent good opportunities for you to pitch an interactive installation there. A few years back, we were approached by the Microsoft facilities team, and they challenged us to come up with an experiment, what a lobby of the future interactive signage might look like. Imagine if you are visiting somebody in a Microsoft building and you have to wait 3 to 5 minutes in the lobby. Then you discover this touchscreen, and you start exploring what happens in that building, what are the restaurants nearby, other interesting Microsoft facts, and so on. So what I really liked about this project was the fact that Intuiface offered out of the box some very interesting components to create very cool UI interactions. And whenever we wanted to push the envelope even further, we were able to aggregate and put our creativity in place and our skill sets to create new components, new features that we could reuse later. Storytelling. How do usually storytelling, Intuiface, and the large corporation come to term together? Usually it looks like this. Your customer will approach you with a thick PowerPoint or a Word document full of technical details, and they will ask you to translate their input into a beautifully designed interactive experience, of course, according to their brand guidelines. So I have mixed news for you. And the mixed news is this: Intuiface alone will not be able to help you succeed in this situation. You will have to work closely with your client. The client is the subject matter expert, and the client will have to help you identify and distill down their long technical story into short messages that then you can apply your creative mastery in Intuiface and design to create a beautiful experience. Without this collaboration, it will be very hard to succeed. Here is a different project we have done for a different customer. This is Deloitte in this case. And you can see the brand guidelines are, of course, different. The style is different, fonts, everything. So they are big into infographics and numbers and visualization. Something that we have been exploring with them is a more extensive use, for example, of motion graphics. Motion graphics animations are adding a lot of production value to your experiences. And whenever the customer can afford it, I would suggest always use it. It just makes the whole experience coming to life in a much more evident way. Surveys. Surveys can be used in different ways. For example, they can be in a part of an attract loop and invite people to touch the screen. Or when you combine them with Intuiface Analytics, they can give you some interesting insights about what your audience thinks about a certain topic. Or if you are at an event, maybe they are a conversation starter for the salesperson who is there at the booth. Case studies. Companies love to talk about how their clients are happy about using their products and services. And these success stories usually come in a format of a PDF, an image, and video, and all of the above combined together. Intuiface excels at this scenario because it allows you to create the templatized databases of information, of media that can work offline, where, for example, there is not a strong internet connection at an event. They can work on multiple devices, and they are easy to maintain, which is a strong value proposition if you want to save money in the long term. Diversity, inclusion, accessibility, all of these are topics that big corporations are very sensitive about. Sometimes because they feel the pressure and to just comply to some laws, some other times because they realize the potential to cater to a very diverse audience, which reflects the diversity of society in general. How does Intuiface plays a role into this? Well, next time you have a conversation about interactive signage with one of the enterprise clients, bring up the conversation about inclusion and accessibility, which it has a very big spectrum. From one end, it could mean just supporting an audiences that speak different languages. On the other end, it means supporting people with certain disabilities. Intuiface already shipped a feature set to make your application comply to accessibility requirements. In particular, features like text-to-speech or speech recognitions, ability to use gestures at the object level, or even keyboard input. This is great to see how Intuiface played ahead of the game here to make sure that all your experiences can be accessible. And finally, new explorations. This is a topic that I particularly love because research and development is part of the DNA of our agency. We love to combine Intuiface with other applications and create what we call the mashups. What you're seeing here is a mashup of Intuiface and Unity 3D, which is a real-time game engine. So we have an overlay in Intuiface and everything else is done with in a 3D environment. What happens when you do a mashup of Intuiface and augmented reality? Imagine that you approach a signage like this, a kiosk, you're looking for a particular kitchen, you take out your phone and you want to visualize what that kitchen might look like through the eyes, through the lenses of your phone. And as you walk into the physical space, you are actually jumping into an augmented view of that kitchen. So here's another experiment that we have done. You receive a text message and you receive it on your watch. You point your phone to your watch, and suddenly through your phone you see some arrows, and those arrows control a physical Intuiface installation. Now here is the augmented reality mashed up with Intuiface. There are so many opportunities to unleash your creativity with this tool. So it's time to summarize some of the key learnings that we came across throughout these years of working with big corporations. So how do you start a conversation with these big entities? First, you have to identify somebody in one of these companies that has a real business problem that you can help resolve. And once you identify this somebody, you are probably going to want to talk to them about creating together a prototype. Sometimes a prototype has a cost, or sometimes even can be free. We have done free work that led to much bigger projects later on. So I'm in favor of starting with free work sometimes. The prototype serves multiple purposes. The first one is it shows and it demonstrates that you can do the work. You understand the technology and you are a trustworthy technical partner that can do the work. The second, it gives ammunition to your client so they can upsell to their management chain this project. And once you get the project, make sure that you deliver flawlessly within the time frame. And this is extremely important because once you beat those deadlines, you gain the trust that you can deliver under tight timelines. And Intuiface is a tool that allows you to compress those timelines. Once you deliver the project, make sure you document it properly. Of course, if you are allowed to do it, if it's a public project, probably you're allowed to create a video out of it. The video will be part of your portfolio, but give it a copy to your client as well. They need proof of the execution of the project. And not only that, but also give a copy of your video to the marketing team at Intuiface as well, because they are going to post it on the partner page on their website, which is highly optimized for search engines. And at least in my case, I got business referrals from the Intuiface website because they found me there before they found me on my own website. And with this, I'd like to thank you everybody for the opportunity to share my experience with you, and I welcome any question. Thank you.
So Paolo, can you go off mute so we can get you on again?
I am off mute. I think.
Definitely we can hear you, Paolo.
Okay, cool.
Jeff, that's definitely your Boston area network, which has an issue. So Paolo, for now, I'm looking at the questions. The last one I got is not really a question, but was awesome from Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for the feedback. We had a couple of questions, maybe not directly related to your session, but how can you embed Intuiface within a microsite or within a website? And today, this is not really something we propose, but we do have a feature which is called Share via URL. And I got an answer just a few days ago from a museum who's bringing live all these museum experiences for their visitors by putting the link on their website. And just with this share via URL, any visitor can download a mini player of Intuiface, and which will automatically download the experience, and then you're good to go. So now we have a question for you, Paolo. Have you integrated with VR, specifically Oculus, before?
So it's a good question. We haven't done any specific integration of Intuiface and Oculus, especially because the Oculus is you require your own headset. With AR is somehow an easier way because you can use your phone and you can trigger your event from a touch screen. But I think it's a good idea to potentially, we need to explore that, how you can how you can spawn a VR experience from, for example, a QR code that is being displayed on a screen. That you can do, not necessarily with Oculus, but even with the Google Cardboard, for example. It's a good thing that it's a good idea that we may explore down the road. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Paolo. Any other question for Paolo before we jump to the next session?
I know there was a question about getting access to this material again, and we're posting all this online. So yes, if you missed something, you want to hear it again, we can certainly make that available for you.
Absolutely, and also we do a lot of experimentation with Intuiface and a bunch of other technologies. We all post everything on our YouTube channel. There are several experiments there that you may enjoy.
By the way, if any of you are not members of the user community, shame on you. Paolo, by the way, is a very good active member of that user community, does preview a lot of the work he's doing, shows you a lot of cool effects he's putting together. So we certainly encourage you to join that. You're going to get some really good stuff out of it, I think.
We have two maybe quick questions for you. Paolo, what was the show with the big Microsoft booth?
So when Microsoft is getting us involved in a lot of, it's called third-party shows, for example, a show about manufacturing where Microsoft has their own big booth at Hannover Messe or Barcelona Smart Cities or healthcare events and so on. So otherwise, Microsoft has their own events like Build, Ignite, but they manage where they manage the entire end-to-end event. So we get more involved into these third-party events.
Thank you. The last question we have, and then we definitely need to jump on the next session, is how is the Unity integration done? Is it third-party within Intuiface? And I think, Paolo, you will agree with me, the best answer is just check on community, because you explain everything.
I would agree. We have an entire section there, that a post that talks about how to integrate the two.
So the best thing to do actually is to go on, I'm going to post just a link as an answer to that question, which is the search engine of our community with the Unity keyword. You will have a few threads, most of them being Paolo's threads, I guess. And the latest mashup with Matterport and Unity is really awesome. But long story short, transparent player on top of Unity and some local network triggers between the two apps to make them to communicate together. That's a very short answer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Paolo. And Seb, you might as well just keep sharing your camera there, because it is now time for tips and tricks with Seb Meunier. Go ahead, Seb.
All right. So my screen should be shared right now on a nice empty composer. Are we good? I think we are.
Looks good, yes.
All right. So for this session, as you know, I am not a big fan of PowerPoint, so I will go with a live demo. Showing a few tips and tricks, and in the context of building an almost real experience. So for the sake of the demo, I took the context of a museum experience, which actually will be part of our soon-to-come Intuiface Academy, so online training materials. So the first hypothesis, we have a good graphic design team that gave us some artworks, maybe a storyboard, maybe some graphic design. So let's have a look at the result, the expected result. This is the PDF with the storyboard, where we have basically a home scene with some menu and some things which will be animated, some visuals. We will have a biography scene, same idea, same the menu. So the menus remains on top all the time, it seems, with some pictures and basic text. The artwork with two subsets, the gallery and then a video section. That's the gallery side here with maybe two lists. The video side. Museum with a map and some basic information. And then a 3D model with the room of Van Gogh. All right, so this is my storyboard, which I have on my second screen. So that's the first tips, use two screens, right? Make sure you can work with a clean area on your main screen and have your resources available on the second screen. Then let's have a look at some of the resources that the graphic designer gave me. So I could go with a regular plain background and play with some rectangles to have the colors. And actually, let me try to do that first, because there's one little graphic tips which I didn't come up with. Let's say we have this bar at the top, which was yellowish something. And then on top of it, we had this picture. The way the designer created this picture, which is actually a transparent PNG, will make the face have the color of your background. That is pretty clever. So with one single picture, you can adjust the background and then have this logo react to it. That's pretty cool. And it's not an interface tip, just a graphic design tip. PNG, plain white and some holes to see through it. And then the color behind it gives the color of the shape. That's pretty cool. Now, for the sake of the demo, we are not going to use this. We are going to use image backgrounds. And the reason is to make sure we have very fluid transitions between the scenes. So I'm going to grab this yellow background, right click, set as scene background. We have our face here, and because this face and all the toggle buttons are going to be shared across all the scenes, we are going to put them into not a layer, but an experience layer, a foreground experience layer. And I'm going to move this head here. This is going to be my header XP layer. All right, so this is the home scene. Naming your objects is pretty important. I'm going to create the other scenes, so biography, And let's go with the artwork scene, just to change the backgrounds here. So the blue background goes in biography, set as scene background. See the face, how it looks blue, that's pretty cool. And the artwork one, I will use the orange one, set as scene background. We need 2 additional scenes, the museum and the 3D. And another tip, when you duplicate a scene, it reuses its background. So museum will have a blue background, and artwork, so 3D, sorry, will have the same as the artwork. So now we have 1 yellow, 2 blue, 2 orange, pretty quickly. Okay, let's have a look at our mockup again. We have some buttons there at the top, and when we select one of them, we have this little shape which actually is going to move from one button to the other. So we have an article which is called Create Menus, and it explains how to use toggle buttons. The beauty of them is when you check one, it can uncheck the other ones as radio buttons. You can make toggle sets. This will be pretty useful, and even if this does not look like a white text, you can change quite a few properties. So let's go here with the biography. I think we want all the button to be completely transparent. So we can remove all this by playing with the opacity, or just grabbing this color code and pasting it in all the fields, and then make the text white. If we look at the graphic chart, I can just type the beginning of the font name, Arial, and then I can select my font, and I think this was something like 45. Yeah, 45 is the right size. And I will have names shorter and longer. I'm going to align this text to the left. All right. So that's my first one. I'm going to duplicate it. So I could do a right-click duplicate, or just use the keyboard shortcut. So let's do Control D, Control D, Control D. All right, and then just rename them. So this one will be artwork. This is going to be museum, and this is going 3D. When you have an object like a button or a text with no entered name, when you type the text, it automatically renames the object with the text you type. That's pretty convenient, so you know which button is which. The important thing was to make sure that they are correctly spread across the menu, and in the behavior properties of the toggle buttons, that they belong to a toggle set. This will make sure that when you check one, it unchecks the other one. And this is my menu, because we could have multiple sets on the same scene or on the same experience. All right, then we had the little white rectangle. So let's go with something white here, 5 pixels, and I am using my mouse wheel here with the Control key, and it will always zoom where the mouse pointer is. Pretty useful as well. If I need to go back to my scene, there is this button here, or the Control 0, like in Photoshop, same shortcuts. And yes, there will be a recording of a session. I have 25 minutes to go through a lot of tips, so I know this can be a bit fast. So this is where the rectangle will be when the biography scene is selected. So now I need to put some action. I need to create some navigation. Let me add a trigger on this button. When the button is checked, I want to do 2 things. I want to navigate to the biography scene with a crossfade transition. And I want to do a second action on the same trigger, right? I don't need to create a second trigger. Let's reuse one trigger for all the actions, so everything is tidy in the experience. And I want to move this rectangle to a specific position, which right now seems to be this position. So that's what I did in Amsterdam, and I thought, yeah, this is okay, but we can make something a bit more cool. So I'm going to duplicate this action here, because I want to do another thing on this rectangle. And instead of doing add another action, pick the target, pick the category, if I just duplicate this, I can just switch to the action which I'm looking for, which actually is the size. I want to animate this rectangle, and I want its width to go to 0. So it shrinks, it becomes almost invisible. And then it reverses at the end. and I want to adjust this. So this animation takes exactly the same time. So the duration here, I'm going to use 0.25 seconds. So right now it does nothing because it doesn't move, but we'll see when we move this rectangle from one button to the others. By the way, you saw I was able to copy an action or copy and paste an action. You can copy one action or multiple actions by holding the control key. Or if you select on the left-hand side, you can copy the trigger, Control C. And then if you are on an object, an asset that has the same kind of trigger, so a toggle button that has the is checked, you can paste it. And now you automatically have the trigger and all the associated actions. Now on this artwork button, I need to change just two things. I want to move to the artwork scene, done. And I want to move the rectangle to this position, done. Now, if I preview this, this is what it looked like. Pretty fast, but we'll see in play mode. All right, let's paste the actions on the two last buttons, museum, and then move the rectangle in here. All right, 3D, paste the action, go to the 3D scene, and move the rectangle in here. Okay, but one last thing, what happens when you're in a home scene? I'm assuming we need to click on this face. We could make this as a toggle button. Sometimes I like to create a fifth button, or let's say a hidden button, which will be the home one, which no one will ever click on. But I'm using it as a controller. So this one, when it is checked, will go back to the home scene, and then we'll move this one to outside of the scene. Now, how can I make this happen? How can I check this button? Well, we have an image here. So for the time being, we are building the first version of this project. Let's use the is_tap trigger on the image. And I'm going to call an action on this toggle button. I'm going to check this button, which by default, by definition, will uncheck any previous one which was checked. Control S, file, save, often, always. And let's test our work. So we are we should be in the home scene right now. So this should be outside of the scene. If we go to biography, see these buttons, they were created in the layer. Let's move all of this in the experience layer. That's a live demo. And we said this rectangle here at the beginning in the attract scene should be outside. Okay, let's try that again. We're on the home scene, we go to biography, we go to artwork. We have this little animation on the rectangle that shrinks and expands itself again. We seem to be quite good, and we can go back to the home scene. I have my skeleton. Now I can work on the content of the different scenes. So in my home scene, I guess we had a text like Vincent van Gogh, which must be aligned, Arial bold, with 70 font size. And I like to center the text, so now I can just make sure it's positioned and aligned to the center of my scene. Most of the time, I would just enter the coordinates. 960, 540, that's the center of a full HD screen. I am sure at the pixel perfect thing that this text is centered right now. All right, the last things we had, let's look at our mockup. Yeah, these are little slideshows of rectangles. So we have two sets of images, and we are going to use the Ken Burns effects. So let's drag and drop the three colored squares. Let's reduce the size here. When I have these three images selected, I can use the design assistant and transform them automatically into a collection. Let's go with the Ken Burns effect. All right, I have my moving rectangles, animated rectangles. Maybe I can just reduce that a bit. Duplicate, duplicate. There, I have the three of them. And now to make sure that they are not exactly the same and they start with a different color, let's say the first one will start with orange, the second one will start with red, and the last one will start with yellow. So now if I hit play, I will have three different colors and this will cycle through the different things. I'm going to duplicate this one so I have exactly the same size of the collection. And then put my other images into this particular collection. See the blue feedback? I'm drag and dropping the images into the collection. I can remove the original plain colors. Now I have my patterns. Same idea, duplicate the collection, and again, change the order. We said red should be the second one, yellow should be the third one. On my side, I'm good. I would send that to the graphic designer and then adjust maybe the position a little bit, maybe adjust the color of the orders, but at least I have a good basis to start working with. Control S. Let's move on to the next scene. Oh, and see that the text here, this should belong to our scene here, not to the experience layer. All right, let's go to another folder. We have some resources for the biography. We have some plain text, all right? We have some images and this little head. So this one will go, oops, it's too big. Tell your designer to put the images at the right size. That's pretty helpful. I think we have a big white text here, which will be an Arial bold white. See how I pick the color by just moving really at the corner, so I don't have to care about how much I go outside of the color picker. And I just move my mouse, it picks the white. That's pretty fast. Let's go with a big size. I'm not sure exactly what I need. And this should be, let me check what we have. Bio Van Gogh. Okay, so Bio, enter, Van Gogh. Align to the right. Let me pick an even bigger font size. Okay, this is too big. The graphic designer didn't give me the right font size. I'm just going to check the adapt font size. And this is automatically create the size that fits this area between the top of the area here and the top of the image. And actually this text, I'm going to reuse it across all the other scenes, right? So I'm going to save this as a design accelerator. I'm going to call this as the scene title for my Van Gogh project. So now when I will go to my other scenes, I just do this, it creates the text, and I can just change this to artwork, something like that. I have saved my right alignment, font size, position, everything. You could do copy and paste, but that works for one. If you have many elements you want to reuse across the experience, creating your own design accelerators is pretty fast and pretty useful. So then we had a little asset flow. Let me move a bit faster on that. Again, design assistant that creates the collection. We want this to be spread across the area here. We don't want any indicator or control, and we want the index in focus to be the second one, so we have something at the center. And then I guess we had this text. Right now, I'm just doing a copy and paste. Not ideal. We'll see in the museum scene how to do things better. Again, I have no idea about the font size. I could just use the auto adapt, and yeah, let's go with that. Control S, save the work. Let's move to the artwork scene. So artwork. First, the graphics that goes on the corner here. All right. And then if we remember well, we had two buttons here and then these two collections, the landscape images and the portrait images. So I have my landscape ones here at the top. Let's drag and drop that, make it into a master grid. Let's reduce the size of this. And we want only 3 elements to be visible. All right. I don't want any scroll effect at the beginning. I don't want this. And we want to see all of them. All right. Again, this has the right size I need for my second collection, so I can just duplicate it. I know I'm expecting some portrait images, and then I can just drag and drop my portrait images into this collection. So I don't have to resize the objects. I can remove the images I don't need to focus on this one and then just adjust the height and then move this to the top. And we have a perfect alignment now. So this will be our gallery group. So let me group them, Control G or right click, add into group. And this will be, let's call that a picture group. And then we will need a video group because we have a video file here. Again, when I drag and drop my images earlier, they automatically went into the collection. If I don't want that, if I don't want the video to go into that group, I would do the drag and drop outside of my scene. So I'm sure that my video is in the layer and not in the group where I would maybe lose it. And then I move it to the location where I actually need it. See how with the mouse I can see the object which is hidden behind and how it aligns and snaps. So now if I show the group behind, yeah, I'm kind of good on the size that my video has, except it's a square video, but it's located at the same size. I might want to use this fit container to content. Look at the blue edges here. Now I have the perfect alignment. In this artwork, I had some kind of orange background behind the video, orange frame around the video. So let's use a rectangle shape to do that. I will use the exact same size as my video container. Fill color, I can use the eyedropper and pick it in the background. I'm good. Let's move this behind the video. Now I don't see it obviously, but I have access to its properties. You could play with the handles, or because I like things to be pixel perfect, or at least Dorian, our graphic designer, likes pixel perfect. She told me that's 10 pixels on each side. Okay, let's increase the width by 20, so 852, and the height by 20 pixels, 722. So now we have 10 pixels exactly on each side of the video. Rectangle and video group. This is our video group. One might be hidden, one might be shown at the beginning. And then we need to redo the toggle buttons down there. So I can reuse this one. I already have the design. Click on my layer to make sure that the button is copied in the right layer. And then maybe change that to align it to the right. And that will be gallery. And we will have video. The important thing, these two buttons right now, because I copied them from my top menu, they belong to the same toggle set. That's not good. I need to make sure this has its own set. So let's say this is the artwork group. And by default, we do see the gallery, so this one should be checked. On the gallery, I will add two basic triggers. When this is checked, I want to show the picture group. And again, I can do quickly the opposite. When it's unchecked, I want to hide things. You see, it might be very small on the screen share, but this one is bold, this one is not, because this one is selected. The action is selected. If I select the trigger side, you see the bold outline here? Now I have selected the trigger. If I duplicate the trigger, it duplicates the trigger and the actions. Just need to change checked into unchecked and show into hide. That's it. I'm going to copy this one, do the same thing on the video, except I need, when the video button is checked, I want to show the video group, duplicate the trigger. When it's unchecked, just hide the video group. If we hit play to test our work, and I should have done a Control S before, I can scroll my list. I can click on video, it shows the video. I can click back on gallery, it shows back the gallery. Good. Doing a save now. How am I on the clock? Okay, not too bad. Remember, if you have any questions, I know this is going fast. Jeff is going to answer them, and I will take a few of them after the session. So, museum, back to the storyboard. Oh, this is a nice one. Map, where is actually the museum in Amsterdam? The address and some opening hours. Okay, let's see what we have about the museum. Oh, we don't have much, but we have the picture. Okay, let's put this one already. Still too big. We definitely need our scene title, which is Van Gogh Museum. So museum. See how the font size adapted automatically? I'm saving a lot of time here. And then in our folder, we have an Excel file. I'm going to just drag and drop it here in the scene to see what we have in that. And we can see it has quite a few columns. Actually, in the interface set, we could look at the X-ray panel to see the column names and the values. We have only one row, which is basically all the information that I want to reuse, including the latitude, longitude, and the map box key, so it doesn't show the get your credentials thing, etc. All right, pretty good. I'm going to just steal a few text from here. The city, the address, and the opening hours. I want these ones in my layer. I will drag and drop on the layer itself so it goes at the top of my layer. Now I can move them. And this collection, actually, I don't need that. This will go here. This will go down there. Probably, actually, this goes with that. If we align the text to the top, now we can make sure that these two text boxes are aligned exactly like they should be. This text would probably be bigger. And then we would have another text here with not a binding this time, oops, but the opening hours. We forgot to put this title there. Now, this doesn't look like a title. A cool feature for the texts, which we use a bit, is copy properties. If I'm copying the properties from this one to the opening hours, there we go. I have the same style. All right, let's add the map. I am going to add the map here. All right. Make sure it's centered. And then use the bindings. So let me open this panel here and pick some information from our Excel file. So we want the latitude down there. Latitude goes on latitude, longitude goes on longitude. We will probably need a bigger zoom. Let's put the mapbox key token so we don't have the message here. All right, let's close the binding and change the zoom level. All right, and then we will add a pinpoint within the map, which I could move manually or just reuse the same information from the Excel file. So latitude and longitude. All right, saving, going in play mode. The map needs to refresh its location a little bit, but in play mode, we're good. The museum is actually here in Amsterdam. That's my pinpoint. When you click the pinpoint, you could show some information, etc. And again, the blue background behind the map, as we did before, just put the rectangle, adjust the width and height, you're good to go. Last scene, 3D model. This should be the fastest one, I think. We do have the new white image to put here, something like that. I will reuse my design accelerator, my DA, and it's Van Gogh room. And then just drag and drop the GLTF model. Let it load. Adjust the size, adjust the zoom level so we are in the room. Done. Big save. Okay, before going in play mode to do a test run, I'm going to add two additional things. One is to make sure that this experience, wherever we are, whatever scene we are in, will always go back to the home scene when no one is touching it. So not on the scene, but at the experience level, I will add a trigger. We can add a trigger at the experience level, which means it will be used, it will be raised in any scene, or maybe in any scene except the home scene, which sounds good. I will put 3 minutes here. And in this case, when this trigger is raised, I want to go back to my home scene with a black fade. All right, that's one thing. Second thing, I want to measure the activity here. So I want to add my data tracking. And just basic thing, include the scene navigation. With just that, I will know how many people go into which scene and how much time they spend within each scene. Actually, I stopped looking at the clock, but I guess I'm at 20 minutes something, where we created this museum experience with 5 scenes, the biography with some pictures collections, the artwork with 2 sub-collections, the gallery and the video, the museum with the map info here, and the 3D model with the room in which you can manipulate, and with your touchscreen you can zoom in and out. If I hit escape, my data has been generated, and we'll go to the data tracking hub. So Jeff tells me I have 2 or 3 minutes left. Okay, so I'm going to go to the conclusion here, and I have my DAs ready, right? My design accelerators. I'm going to add 2 scenes. One here, in which I don't want my menu, which is my conclusion slide. See, I did a slide in the end. And another one, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. So let's add this one and jump back here and go in play mode. If you want to take a snapshot, it's now. These are almost all the bullet points and the tips and tricks I've used to create this museum experience. Experience layers, experience triggers, stop copying and pasting content which is shared across multiple scenes. Toggle button sets, super useful to make sure that things are happening when you check one and things are happening when you uncheck one, whatever one was selected before, was checked before. Trigger and action, copy and paste. Decide if you want to copy one action, multiple actions, one trigger, multiple triggers. You have the liberty, the freedom of copying anything you want actually between objects. Adaptive font size, maybe not the best friend of graphic designers who want to be pixel perfect, but if you don't care about pixel perfect and you want just to be fast, it's super cool. If you have your data coming from an Excel file and you don't know the length, or coming from an API and you don't know the length, that's the feature to use, definitely. Excel file as a content reference. I've been building AI Composer. I can just send the Excel file to my friends from the marketing or communication. They can update the content. That works with Excel. That works with an online CMS with APIs. Think about outsourcing the content, which needs to be updated by a non-Composer user. Analytics, I wish I had time to show you the graphs, but I don't, but we'll come back to that. And the web triggers, that's actually the next scene. So, oops, in which I forgot to remove my experience layer. Again, this is a live demo. I don't want my header here. All right. So all the audience, please wake up, grab your phone, grab your smartphone, your Android phone or your iPhone, and please scan the code on your screen. I want you to vote. Thank you for the vote number 1. I want you to vote and to tell me how many of you like these trips. How many of you are still with us? How many of you are not having a coffee break? Ooh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, I may share my screen. You do see me on the webcam, right? I'm not doing anything here. Hands raised, that's not me. My phone is here. I haven't scanned anything yet. Who said no? Jeff, I'm sure it's you. All right, Jeff, if you want to jump back, I think on my side, we are done. Unless you want me to go through the analytics, but I think we are running a bit over time.
I voted yes 48 times, just to make sure. Seb, thank you very much for that. An audience favorite. We have come to the portion of our webinar where we will take a break. So let me take control again. Thank you very much. And so if everybody looks at your screen, you can see here's the agenda for this afternoon. Most of the afternoon is new content, not really presented anywhere until this webinar. We'll start with my look at what the current health climate means for touchscreen use. fact, some of you already asked this question in the questions panel. So what does this all mean about distributing digital content in physical places? Are there ways to virtualize it, ways to avoid touch, how to accommodate touch in this new normal? I will talk about that. Then Vincent, our COO, Vincent Oconte, will present you the product roadmap, what's going to happen this year. We'll do the Ask Us Anything, and then we'll conclude with a look by our colleague Kurt Haller at what this means for your business, this new normal following the pandemic. So we'll take a 10-minute break. Watch your screen. We'll do a little countdown, and we'll see you in 10. Okay, everybody? Thank you. All right, thank you, guys. Thanks for coming back, not abandoning us for other things in Amsterdam. We're not going to get set with the second part of today's agenda. I'm going to take the lead to discuss the world of touchscreens in the current pandemic climate. Some of you, as I mentioned before, had asked this question earlier in that questions panel. Just a reminder, again, use that questions panel. If you have any questions, we'll answer them for you. I actually also just authored a paper recently on this topic. It is no shock that in the current health climate, expectations with regard to touchscreens are going to change dramatically. One might even ask, do they go away? We're a French company. Does cheek kissing go away? Do handshakes go away? I mean, these are some big, fundamental cultural changes. And what does that say about touchscreen use in the new world? We are still mid-confinement. We are not post-confinement. And let me get a timer on myself because I will speak forever. Start. But what can we do about it proactively? All right, so this is a discussion as how to be proactive about anticipated, inevitable changing attitudes about touchscreen and touchscreen use. They will change. Before COVID-19, touchscreen use wasn't even an issue. I know somewhere in 2019, late 2019, maybe it was early 2020, there was this whole thing about touchscreens at McDonald's, and there was stuff on the screen, But the fact is, that was always true. That wasn't news. It just made headlines for a little while. And honestly, even that kind of drifted away and people stopped thinking about it. We just accepted that when you're out touching stuff, your hands are going to get dirty. Anybody with a parent, you tell your children to touch nothing when they're out and about. We know that. And so for us, touchscreens, ATMs, ordering kiosks, wayfinders, we touched them. It wasn't even a thought, right? Health wasn't even an issue. I mean, there was dirt, and so you were maybe conscious of cleaning your hands, but getting sick, again, as a parent, you said it, the 5-second rule maybe didn't apply to a 2-year-old, but when you're, 42, the 5-second rule, you pick up the food, you eat it, how bad could it be, right? So health wasn't really a concern. And what was interesting, in fact, is there was this transition to thinking about that maybe self-service is going to usurp standing in line and working face-to-face, that it was becoming so common, so ubiquitous, that touchscreen use was going to replace a lot of face-to-face interaction. And now we have the current health and emotional climate with the coronavirus. So now, am I telling you something you don't know? People are going to be very hesitant to work with a touchscreen, right? They're going to assume it's dirty. There's no more 5-second rule. My guess is the 5-second rule will be something we talk about to our grandkids. Like, did you know there used to be a 5-second rule? It's over. We're going to assume everything is very dirty, harmful to us and to our family. And touchscreens become wrapped up in the same sort of breath as social distancing. If I'm trying to avoid infecting others or them infecting me, isn't a touchscreen just another vector of transmission, right? And it's the same drawbacks as just standing in line with somebody, except now I'm using my hands, but my hands are all over my face. it's never going to be the same, right? So the only question is, are we throwing in the towel about working with touch screens, or are the things we can do in anticipation to accommodate this new normal, all right? And we're going to talk about this in two parts. It's a two-pronged approach. First, what can we do about existing deployments? What can we do about planned and future deployments where touch is a player? What can we do? The second is about alternatives to touch. Touch is not the only way to interact. In fact, key to Intuiface's value proposition is there are other ways to interact with content, and we make that possible. Can your clients identify a means for creating multi-mode interaction, other ways of interacting, not eliminating touch, but complementing it, so you can still get the same or maybe even better levels of interactivity while accommodating the concerns everybody will now have about physical interaction with public-facing stuff and with health in general. So I'm going to walk through this sort of two-pronged approach with you, and hopefully we can kind of level set on where we need to kind of point our business moving forward. Certainly this applies to agencies and integrators with your own clients, but frankly, it doesn't matter if you're just some marketing and sales team at a trade show. Even at a trade show booth, this stuff matters now, right? It's the new normal. So let's start with the first prong, which is touch is here to stay. It's not going away, all right? It's not, there's no way it's going to disappear, but we need to plan for the changes, the change in attitude, and address those. So the first thing we recommend with regard to existing and future deployments is that your on-screen messaging must incorporate some aspect of cleanliness. You know, certainly in the United States, I can't speak for country to country, but certainly in the US now, the general recommendation is if you cannot socially distance, put on a mask, period. The main reason for putting on the mask is not preventing you from getting sick, but to prevent you from getting somebody else sick. The reasoning is you might have it, but not know it. And most of us don't have N95 masks and things that are filtering the air and preventing the viral particulates from getting out. So it's not reasonable to expect that you'll never get sick with those things. Plus, most of us are not very good at not touching our face, and then if you touch the mask. But we are advised, put on the mask. It reduces the chance you can get others sick. And it also does another thing, which is it communicates that you care. It's a visual, nonverbal communication that you're aware of everybody's concerns, you're prioritizing that concern, and you're doing something about it, right? Now, if you're in the store, you worry about somebody who isn't masked, right? New normal. Why aren't they masked? Are they sick? So this about online, this messaging of cleanliness, this is about communicating to your users as a business, as an enterprise, communicating that you care and that you're thinking about it and you're mindful of their concerns, right? So if nothing else, this means messaging that talks about, hey, don't forget, wash your hands after you use it, or be careful, minimize face touches, or hey, if you got a glove, you might want to put on the glove. And by the way, do your touch screens support interactivity with gloved hands? Something you might want to check, right? So to broadcast to your users, we know what you're going through. We're going through the same thing. We're mindful of that. In fact, we're even going to try to reinforce best practices to ensure that everybody is doing the same thing and being responsible, right? So you're literally using screen real estate, not all the time. Maybe it's in the attract loop, maybe it's in certain aspects of the experience, but you're communicating your awareness and your concern and ensuring that everybody is on the same page about taking care of themselves. Certainly, if you're going to do this, the advice changes, right? The recommendations change. You need to make sure that messaging is up to date. If you're communicating something that's no longer true, it's almost worse than saying nothing, because you're showing I used to listen, but I don't listen anymore. I no longer pay attention to the news and the latest medical recommendation, so my messages are out of date. What's that say to your audience? Is that going to encourage their use or back them away? So our first recommendation for existing and future touch-first deployments is to communicate your awareness of this new normal and maybe even help level set everybody so they're following good, healthy practices. The second probably is a no-brainer. Some of you might be resisting the idea, but let's face it, you probably should have hand sanitizer stations. Now, if you're in a museum, for example, there's already hand sanitizer stations around. Maybe you don't need one dedicated to each individual kiosk, right? But if these are, like a wayfinding installation, or maybe it's in your trade show booth, anything in a public area where there's a variety of businesses or people congregating, you should probably have a dedicated hand sanitizer station, because nobody's going to believe your screen is clean. They're just not going to believe it. And even if they have their own pointer, like a pen to point, they still got to put that pen in their pocket or in their purse. Inevitably, something is still getting dirty, right? Even the glove, right? Then the glove is dirty. So if you put a hand sanitizer station next to your installation, you are saying, look, don't be afraid. No matter how dirty you think this screen is, you are 1 second away from disinfecting your hands and being rid of any contamination. Let's just embrace the idea that this is going to be the attitude and this is how we need to handle it, which is to make it as easy as possible for people to treat themselves, to clean themselves up after interaction so they don't have to worry about it, right? Make it super visible, put signs on it, do whatever you can to make it visible. Your on-screen messaging should probably say, by the way, sanitizer station, don't forget to use it after you interact with me. Be very explicit. It will calm everybody down. They go, well, okay. And in fact, if you think about it, if there's two screens, right, one with a sanitizer station, one without, which one's going to get the use, right? So let's, for some reason, let's start again. So let's just acknowledge that this is what's going to happen and embrace it. Install hand sanitizer stations where it makes sense. Again, if they're already there, okay, maybe you don't need any more, but a lot of places don't have it. Our third recommendation, on-screen messaging, hand sanitizer stations. The third is having a publicly visible and fulfilled cleaning schedule. Again, people are going to assume everything is dirty, and if it looks dirty, right, and that could be the screen certainly, but just the housing and even the area around on the ground around it, if it looks undercleaned and disused, nobody's going near it. It's just not going to happen. So as much as you can, you need to communicate that this is an actively clean station and then really do it. Make sure the screen looks clean, the housing looks clean, there's no garbage around the kiosk, what have you. Project the information that you're taking care of that installation. For sure, that means filling a hand sanitizer station. Can you imagine hand sanitizer station with a big sign, on-screen messaging that says, don't worry, there's a sanitizer station, come on over, and people are tapping your screen, go to the sanitizer station and it's empty. That would be awful, right? So this isn't just about it's a nice thing to do. If you have a sanitizer station, you've got to keep that thing filled. And when I say you, it's whoever, is ultimately responsible for that. But, post that cleaning schedule if at all possible. Certainly fulfill it. Even if it's once a day, you got to make sure the sanitizer station is filled. You want to make that screen look clean. I've got a touch screen. It takes a day for it to look all swiped and oily and messy. And I clean my hands a lot, I do. So you got to keep that in mind. So on-screen messaging about cleanliness, hand sanitizer stations, very visible and fulfilled cleaning schedules. Attitudes have changed. We're not going back to the old ways. You need to proactively prepare for people's attitudes towards touch screens, and this is the right way to do it, to visibly and loudly communicate that you care and you're doing something about it. Again, be honest with yourself. You would want this too, right? If you go somewhere and see a touch screen, you would want that too. All right, so that's what you do with existing and future touch-first deployments. Now let's talk about what to do other than touch, right? There are alternatives. So going beyond touch, again, 3 pieces of advice. The first one certainly is adopting, embracing, deploying multi-mode experiences that could include touch, but are not limited to touch. Anybody who knows anything about Intuiface knows this is a message we preach anyway, but certainly the idea of giving people a choice, letting them choose to touch or not, increases the likelihood that they will stay and take advantage of the content and the objective of that deployment, right? Some people will just never want to touch a screen again for the rest of their lives. Well, maybe we can still capture their attention, engage them, learn about their preferences through other modalities. So some of the big ones, there's computer vision. We talked about the OpenVino, the face detection feature based on OpenVino that we delivered yesterday to identify age and gender. That's an interaction. Just because I'm not actively doing something doesn't mean it's not an interaction. Just the camera seeing me and collecting information, that's an interaction, and it's an interaction you can react to in context. With Intuiface, we do also offer integration with Qivity, which is a third party with a really cool demographic kind of computer vision tool set, and we have other things in the pipeline as well. So both free and third-party solutions for collecting information through a camera and using that information to customize and tailor your content. Another example is RFID NFC readers. Broadly speaking, we're talking about tagged objects. It could be a lift and learn scenario. It could be a place and learn scenario. Nobody's touching the screen. They're holding something with the tagged ID. But if I'm in a store, maybe I'm still taking shirts off the rack, but I don't want to touch the price finder, but I will wave the some tagged object over a screen or barcode scanner or whatever, right? So Intuiface can certainly do this. We have our integration with Nexusphere, as we talked about earlier. Fidgets is another example. You can build your own. So it doesn't matter who the provider is, but any sort of contactless means of figuring out what item somebody is holding is a form of interaction and enables them to benefit from your deployment without having to touch a screen. Voice activation. With Intuiface, we support this very well on Windows. You can do speech recognition with triggers. You literally just say which words you want. And you can listen for those words and react to those words. It's a feature we've had for a couple of years, in fact. So you can speak to Intuiface to express your preferences. Under the covers, we're using Windows speech recognition, so it's not some engine we wrote, it's Windows. It's built into the operating system. And it actually works very well. And it shouldn't say Nexusphere under voice activation. It should be under sensors and IoT. So that's the fourth category, sensors, the Internet of Things. This is like motion detection or button presses or temperature changes. Again, a lot of them might be passive. I didn't purposely move in front of a sensor, it just saw me. Or maybe I pushed a button, or maybe it's some external device. You know, maybe my Nest thermostat is triggering something in my experience that somehow is relevant to the audience. So thanks to sensors and actuators, we can, in context for that particular environment around that particular player and that particular location, react and respond in ways that don't involve touch. So you definitely want to give people a choice. Second, enabling interaction through personal devices. This is a really cool one because here people are using a digital device that they're comfortable with. They clean it every day, they wipe it down, and they're using it to navigate through material on screen. We've actually publicized this a little bit in the past. What Seb just did previously where you voted, that's an example. QR codes are really the linchpin here because QR codes enable you to transmit information from the screen to somebody's personal device. Now, the classic use case is just to give them a URL for a web page, right? So they're interested in some content, they scan the QR code on their phone, it opens up a web page with information about whatever it is they care about. Classic QR code usage, feeling a little passé before the pandemic. Now it's going to be all over the place because you don't have to touch anything. You can put it on your digital device. A really cool alternative use case with QR codes is to send people to a web page that lets them control the media on the target display When you voted, you were controlling media on the target display, right? You clicked yes or no, and that was transmitted to Seb's experience. Well, you can build a web page that can do just about anything in a Intuiface experience. You can scroll through collections, you can navigate to new scenes, you can play videos, you can vote. You know, all of these things can be rendered on a web page, and thanks to web triggers, you can, or what we call remote actions, you can communicate these desires to the running Intuiface experience. That's fantastic. I don't even have to make the touch screen accessible. It can be behind a window. Didn't even have to be a touch screen at this point. You say, look, you can manipulate this content, you can search, scan this QR code on your phone, it opens up a web page, and now you can remotely control that content. Yes, there's a little concern about security, right? You're opening a website on somebody else's phone. So maybe you need a little messaging on screen to say, look, we're very sensitive to GDPR and security, and we're not collecting any information. And you might want to do that so people get used to that. But it's a really cool use case. People are somewhat used to it because of contactless payment. I don't know how popular it is. You know, you wave your phone over some sort of receiver and it collects payment information so you can make purchases. But you know you're going to see a lot more of that as well. And as people get used to that idea, the broader notion of using my phone to communicate my preferences, I think, will be adopted. Heck, maybe you're letting people open up shopping carts on their phone, you know, where they scan a QR code and they get their shopping cart. So you can get pretty wild with this. The last thing here is about content personalization. So we talked about alternatives to touch. We talked about enabling people to use their mobile phones. The third one is content personalization. This is all about time to completion. Here's what I mean. If the kiosk knows something about me, that enables me to that enables the purveyor of content to curate it somewhat in real time. It's a shortcut to the call to action. If I have two kiosks, one knows my age and gender and one doesn't, which one will get me to content that interests me faster, right? It's going to be the one with knows my age and gender. Now, it doesn't know my name, my address, it's all anonymous, but it knows a little bit more about me, which kind of speeds up the interaction. You skip a couple of steps. One thing you shouldn't do is have a touch kiosk that takes forever. Tap, 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 and you're navigating. If you can speed that up, all the better. And personalization is the way to do that. And there's lots of ways to be creative. I mean, you could use dwell time and say, well, if they've been at the kiosk for longer than 2 minutes, show them this coupon code, right? Or if the temperature is getting really high, try to promote some cold water. I don't know, right? So you can be really creative about personalizing that experience in real time, and it gets people to the call to action, to the objective of that deployment very quickly. So keep that in mind. I think people, the audience, will benefit from that. So look, adaptation is the key to survival. The attitude towards touchscreens is going to change. And like everything else in life, we need to adapt as well if we want to survive. So embrace the shift. It's coming. Let's be proactive about our response. And we highlighted some ways you can be proactive about it. Be empathetic. You're in the same boat as everybody else. If it seems a little odd or uncomfortable to you, it probably will to others as well. Keep that empathy in mind. I think it will help structure the way you approach your clients, where you talk about future projects. And you know what? Acknowledge that if you embrace this sort of new approach and incorporate new kinds of interactivity, you might have a better deployment, right? If you were limiting yourself to touch and limiting yourself to the ways you personalize and adopt other types of interactivity, if you're hesitant about that, maybe this is freeing. So, you know, I never want to be positive or spin anything optimistically in these the current times we're in, but I do think some healthy reappraisal of how we tell a story and communicate with an audience and enable them to interact with us leads to a much more successful, engaging, sticky deployment, which is what we all want. Okay? Good. That's everything. I am now going to switch gears. We're going to go to Vincent, who's going to speak with you about the roadmap. So we're transitioning from a mindset to some really cool new stuff you can do with Intuiface, we hope, over the coming year. So Vincent, I'm going to make you presenter. We're going to change the agenda just a little bit. The webinar was originally scheduled to end at 2:20. It was a 2-hour and 20-minute webinar. We're going over. We're going to switch it up just a little bit. We'll have Kurt Haller speak first on his topic. We'll do Ask Me Anything at the conclusion. So if you want to stick around, you can. Otherwise, we've covered all the material we promised, okay? So Kurt, I'm going to make you presenter and hand it over to you.
All right, that sounds good. All right, are you seeing my screen, Jeff?
Yep, we're good.
Awesome, great. So thanks, and this again, everybody. This is Kurt Haller. I'd like to say, first of all, thanks everyone for making it this far. We've come a long way today. So, boy, COVID-19, wow, that was fast. Is anybody else out there like me thinking that this has really been a very fast thing? I think it's safe to say that we're all a little bit shocked by the speed and the extent of the disruption that the coronavirus has had in our businesses, our personal lives, and the world around us. I hope you, your family, friends, and colleagues are all staying safe and healthy. They say that the disruption often accelerates changes that were, in some regards, already underway, leading to, a new normal or, maybe the next normal, right? So are things going to change? I think for the most part, the answer will be yes. For some businesses, a lot. For a few businesses, maybe not so much. But at this point, it's impossible to know with any certainty what lies ahead. Businesses are going to need to be both flexible and adaptable. And I guess that's just good because it happens to be strengths of Intuiface platform as well. So what are some things that we're seeing and hearing in the marketplace? Well, first of all, as the pandemic recedes and businesses return to work, we expect to see a surge in client desires to update their existing content. As Jeff had mentioned earlier, updating things like on-screen messaging around, cleanliness in sanitation. Is there a cleaning schedule? What's the availability of wipes or a hand sanitizer situation or sanitation station, right? I think it's the idea is you want to show your clients that it's safe to touch, and that shows that you care about them. We also think there's going to be an interest in COVID-19 messaging. What have been the business impacts and the ongoing business impacts of the virus? What are the potential impacts on customers, as well as what has been your business's social response? I think those will all be interesting. We can expect clients are going to be asking us for advice on how to communicate better with our customers, right? So guidance on what to say, how should we be saying it, even guidance, for example, on how should we be cleaning our screens, how often, those types of things. So this is an opportunity for you to be proactive in giving advice to your end customers to help them better navigate the situation as we go forward. I think we're going to see project requests for with much shorter delivery times than we've seen in the past. People are going to want to make up for time that's been lost to the shutdown. Perhaps we'll see projects restart that were placed on hold before. I also think we're going to begin to see some projects that were about ready to start before. Now people are going to want to start them again. The deadlines may not have changed. However, the budgets probably are going to be a little bit smaller. I think there's going to be revenue shortfalls just about everywhere from the pandemic, and that's going to squeeze everyone's budget. We should expect every customer is going to be looking to do more with less. But at the same time, I think we can expect that clients are going to be looking for proof that their projects are effective, and we need to be able to present them with that kind of proof. As we transition to the new normal or the next normal, we begin to see some other fundamental changes. First of all, I think from a frontline employee perspective, we're going to see fewer frontline employees. There's going to be an increase in simple, easy to use, easy to deploy technology at the front lines. Many consumers will feel more comfortable interacting with a screen than a person. At the same time, I think businesses are going to be looking to keep their employees safe and healthy too. So I think you'll see an increase in frontline technology. We'll also see an interest in contactless interactivity. So things like voice, facial detection, gestures. I think that companies are going to be very willing to start experimenting with these other types of interactivities side by side existing touch. Much the same way when touch was first introduced, people were introducing touch side by side human interaction. I think we'll see brands that will look to better communicate with their customer, connect their customer journeys across these different digital platforms so that they're consistent and coordinated experiences through things like APIs, for example. I also think we're going to see some personalized experiences or more prevalence of personalized experiences where users are willing to self-identify so that they can go further in their journey more quickly without having to touch so many things on the screen. And then lastly, I think that you're going to see more of a focus on data and analytics for digital in the physical space. And I think that companies are going to want to measure their baselines, not only to discover trends, but also to be able to understand the ROI. They're going to use analytics for insight to help improve the customer experiences and overall to drive things like profitability. So what are some of the things that you can do to prepare for the recovery? Well, first of all, investigate the developments for touch-first content. As Jeff had shown earlier, are there things that you can do, hand sanitizer or sanitizer stations, wipes that you can add very quickly to your existing implementations? Are there things coming like antiviral screens that might make sense for your business? Excuse me. It's a good time to improve your Intuiface skills. All of us, fall into our comfort zones a little bit, right? So it's a good time to polish up some of your skills or maybe learn some new ones. When's the last time you watched one of the pre-recorded webinars on our website? A good place to pick up some new skills that maybe you haven't used for a while or haven't seen before. Also, look at things like connectivity and personalization. How familiar are you with connecting through API Explorer? That's going to be something I think that's important for customers, certainly as we look to personalize and connect our experiences across our brand, but also for things like the cloud content library and things like that. Also, you should remember that we have this experience marketplace available through Composer on our website, where you can see lots of different experiences there to give you not only design insights, but also to help you understand how some of these new types of interactivity options work that you can potentially use on some of your existing customer projects. Next, become proficient in non-touch interactive options. All right. So Jeff mentioned a number of them earlier, such as using QR codes so your mobile phone can control the screen, for example, or facial detection with things like OpenVino. Again, for these non-touch interactive options, there are experiences available on our marketplace that you can download to reverse engineer and see how they work. I might suggest it could be even interesting to take one of your existing customer projects and try and add some of these new interactivity options to it so you can see firsthand how you potentially could incorporate that into some of your clients. Next, I think, using analytics to add some value to your customer relationships. Offer proof to show your customers how their investment is paying off. Are people still using touchscreens? How are they using them? What about these new interactivity options that you've added? Are people using those? What content's being used and what isn't, for example? Real data is better than assumptions or anecdotal observations, and proof will make it easier to get your next project funded. Lastly, I think review your existing client base and take a look at what customer presentations or customer experiences are out there that you can try and add some value to by adding some new interactive options. Be proactive and take these to your customer. Don't wait for them to ask, but show them to your customer. Say, here's some things we've been thinking about, and have that kind of dialogue. I think your customers will appreciate it, and it will potentially lead to some additional projects for your business. So many of you are familiar with the value of Intuiface, and I know we've been running a little bit late here, so I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do think it's important, certainly, that we remember that compared to other ways of doing things outside of Intuiface, there's a pretty significant savings in cost and significant savings in time that are available to all of us. The faster turnaround that we get on these projects using Intuiface is something that your customers will appreciate by you being able to deliver faster, but it's also something that's going to help improve your cash flow as an agency or an integrator, because the faster you can deliver something to your clients, the faster you're going to get paid. The other thing I think is important to remember is that measurable proof. Again, the content is being used. Who's using it? What are they using? Where, when, and how? These are all questions that can be very easily answered by Intuiface Analytics. It's very easy to drop in analytics to your existing experiences, and I think that your customers will see significant amounts of value from understanding how things are using, because they may have some trepidation in wondering, are people still using these screens? Are people still using the things I've paid for? And this is a good way for you to add some value and proof points to them, so they're able to see exactly how things are being used. And again, that can help you with your projects being funded as we go forward. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap it up and turn it back over to Jeff to be able to take on the closing.
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate it. The sign of a good webinar, is running over. I mean, it's like a meal, right? If you leave stuff on your plate, it means if you need to leave stuff on your plate, I should say, or it means you didn't get enough food. So we want to put a lot on your plate here. Here's what we're going to do. We're about 10 minutes over the original plan. We were originally planning to end at 2:20. We're now a little past 2:30 or almost 2:40. All right, a little more like 15, 20 minutes. What we're going to do is let me close the webinar and preserve Ask Me Anything for right after. So we're not going anywhere. We're sticking around. But let me close in case you want to go. And then we're going to combine Ask Me Anything with the happy hour so that we can share questions and share answers. So when we closed the conference in Amsterdam, I couldn't not mention this. We inaugurated what we call the Distinguished User Award. First time we ever did this, it was this is the first person to ever get it. Who gets the Distinguished User Award? It's practitioners who exhibit extraordinary product skill, passion for the discipline of interactive content creation, and generosity of spirit dedicated to supporting the global community of Intuiface users. It was actually easy to write that definition because all I did was write a biography of Paolo Tossolini, our favorite guy. He's awesome. We gave him a little plaque. He's got it, I'm sure, right in the middle of the dining room table in his home, so he can see it every day. So we love you, Paolo. Congratulations. And who knows? Maybe you'll be the next one to get it, because next year we'll be in Barcelona. So hopefully we overcome the current viral crisis and things go back to conference normal. Integrated Systems Europe is no longer going to be in Amsterdam. They're moving into Barcelona. It's our plan to be there. We'll have a bigger and better Intuiface User Conference in Barcelona, as well as a very kick-butt booth at the Integrated Systems Europe show. We really hope you can be there. If not, we'll do this. We will still continue to do this at DSC, perhaps. But we'd love to see you in Barcelona.